Come one, come all, it's Quinn David Furness. This is my podcast, the Beantown Podcast. It is the People's Podcast, as voted by you, the fans. One of Baltimore's top 500 podcasts. It's Baltimore City, not Baltimore County. I want to make sure that we're all clear on that. Happy Father's Day, June 17th, 2018. The Beantown Podcast, first ever Father's Day special, and what a special day it is. We're coming to you live from home base itself, 817 St. Paul Street, here in beautiful Beantown, USA. How is everyone doing? The summer is definitely here. 85 degrees, humid as balls, and yeah, wow. Let's get this out of the way before anything else. It is Father's Day, and I wrote a little ditty for all you dads out there, and it's a little ballad about my own dad. It's got some spunk, it's got some technical skills. Yeah, I think it's gonna be lit. So without further ado, here's the Father's Day Beantown Podcast Happy Father's Day special. Dad, oh what a dad. So glad you're not dead. So glad you're my alive dad. Dad, if you were dead, you'd be like a mummy. That'd be really weird. So happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Pops. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. I love you, Pops. Dad, you took me to Orlando, and then you got food poisoning. That really sucked. Dad, that's the last time we went to any Bob Evans south of the Mason-Dixon line. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Pops. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Pops. Here's something you're really gonna like. Little scat solo. Here we go. Beep bop bop ba doo. Beep bop ba da bop. Beep ba da bop ba da boop. Biddy biddy bop bop ba da bop. Ba da ba da bop ba da bop bop. Ba da ba da bop bop ba da bop. Wee ba da bop bop ba da bop ba da bop bop ba da boop boop. Oh, biddy ba da bop ba da bop bop ba da bop bop. Ba da ba da bop bop ba da bop. Ba da ba da bop bop ba doo. Ba da bop 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 ba da. It's not Jason Mraz. It's just Quinn David Furness, and this is my podcast. Hey, happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Pops. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Pops. I love you, Jason Mraz. And I love you, Bob Evans. And I don't actually hate mummies. I think mummies are kind of cool. Think mummies are kind of cool. Oh, mummies, I love you too. Woo. All right. Oh, what a day. What a day. What's been going on with everybody else? Listener discretion is advised. Need a breather. Good thing I got water here from my University of Delaware Chemical Engineering class of 2018 mug. Thank you to the Blue Hens for providing me with this beautiful gift. I'm glad you're a fan of the podcast. I'm a fan of yours too. Joe Flacco, what a Blue Hen. Listener discretion is advised. When you are imbibing in the fruit of my nectar, we occasionally will use some 18 plus, not suitable for Incredibles 2 audiences out there. And number 2, the podcast is just objectively terrible, as it has been since day one. This is podcast number 23. That is Michael Jordan's number, baby. So you know this podcast is just going to be clutch with just the right touch of smugness. I mentioned Incredibles 2 because I went and saw it yesterday, the sequel to the 2004 film. 14 years in the making here. Brad Bird was back to write and direct. Pretty much everybody from the original was back. Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter. I think one of the kids was the same. And Samuel L. Jackson, of course. Brad Bird does Edna Mode. No Jason Lee this time around. Any of you out there hoping for a little Syndrome reappearance, you're going to be disappointed. He did not appear in this film. I thought Syndrome was maybe Pixar's best villain. Not that, Pixar movies always have a great villain, but a lot of them do. I think the Sid from Toy Story. In fact, the Toy Story movies usually have good villains. Sid and Al and Zurg from Toy Story 2, and that Bear, Lotso in Toy Story 3. Those were all good. Incredible. Syndrome is a great villain. Who's the who plays the bad guy in A Bug's Life? Let's look that up now, because it's the main guy is what's his name? Is it Richard something? Let's check this out. Never thought I'd be Googling A Bug's Life at this stage in my life, but here we are. What's their names? Dave, not Richard. I was thinking Richard Kind. Dave Foley plays Flick, and Kevin Spacey. Oh, isn't that timely? Kevin Spacey as Hopper, leader of the Grasshopper Gang. That's appropriate. Oh, Richard Kind is in it too. He plays Molt, Hopper's dim-witted younger brother. Oh, so they're teaming up. Dennis Leary is in that movie too. You don't hear a lot about Dennis Leary these days. He also did he did the Ice Age movies. I think he was in those movies. He plays the tiger, and I don't know. I'm sure he's still doing stuff, but you don't see his comedy very much anymore. That's usually that's kind of what he made himself on, and I don't know. I take interest in Dennis Leary because I was watching his run on Celebrity Jeopardy from this is 16 years ago. Regis was hosting a comedy edition, and oh man, who else is on that cycle? Ray Romano, Bill Maher. I might be conflating two different seasons now. Kathy Griffin's on there. I don't know. One of those videos a couple weeks ago popped up in my newsfeed, and now I would say on average every day I watch at least one episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That stuff was golden. It was before Google. You could phone your friends, and it was fun stuff. Ben Stiller's run was great. He calls his mom, and she is of no help. That's a fun episode. Anyways, it is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Hope brunch was nice this morning. I sent him an e-card. Now, I'll admit, I tried to send him a couple e-cards, and each time I kept getting to the send screen, and I was like, in order to send your e-card, please become a free subscriber. I was like, it's not a free subscriber if I have to pay $7.99 a month. It's free after I pay the $8, but up and until that point, it's not quite as free for me. So on my third try, just like Jesus being resurrected on the third day, the e-card was sent. It wasn't quite as fun, right? It didn't have the moving pictures. The first couple ones I found, one from Hallmark was this really good one with these bears fishing in the sun. He throws this whole reel right into the lake, and the dad's like, "Oh, that's a bummer," and they're chuckling and chortling, and they share the rod, and they have a great time. The second one was a little bit less fun, but It also included bears. I have a habit of using bears on cards that I send. There was this. We had this program. I don't know if it was a Microsoft program. I don't even remember what it was called. It was. Someone's gonna have to help me out with this. It was like a card making software. It was like the most early 2000s looking software I can think of. It's like Season's Greetings or something, but that's not what it was. I know that's not what it was. And we would make all of our cards on there. And there was this one famous picture from like the clipboard, and it was of this bear with this piece of cake. And I always used that. And I think the first 10 times I used it, there wasn't a pattern yet. I was just like, oh, this looks like a great picture. I'll use this one every time without realizing it. And then eventually it started to become a parody of itself when I, probably by the time I turned 20 or 21. But up until that point, we were just having fun. Oh, man. Someone's going to have to help me out with the name of that. But yeah, happy Father's Day to my dad. He is not located in Beantown. In fact, I probably haven't spent a Father's Day with my dad in 5 years or so. So it's not something I get to partake in with frequency, nor do I get to be there for his birthday. I'm just a great son. But for all of you dads out there, thank you, and thank you for subscribing to the podcast. I was at an O's game on Friday night, and they handed out these floppy hats, bucket hats, I think is what they're called. And it really completed my dad look outfit because I had the floppy hat, and I was wearing this blue Hawaiian shirt that I have, which I purposely ordered in extra large, XXL maybe. I think it was cheaper, and it looks hot. If you look hot, wear it. That's a Joe Maddenism. And then I had my khaki shorts. I was just working the entire look, looking like a true dad. That's basically what I'm going for on these Tinder and Tinder-like sites. I'm not trying to blow anybody away. I totally got the dad bod going. I got the dad jokes going. I got the whole package, really, pun intended. And with limited results, we were talking a little bit about Tinder and about online dates last week, and we actually put out a call to action, if you will, calling the fans, asking them for some of their best, aka worst, first date online dating edition stories. I have another good one that I'll share. Remember last week we were talking about the parking girl. Oh, what a day that was. Happy Friday. Can't park. But we did get some fan interaction. Thank you to all the fans. You are what makes this podcast work. Before we get to those Tinder stories, I'll mention we did ship out some merch. We've had some merch circulating for myself, for my own personal use, the past couple months or so, but we now officially have sent out our first batch of Beantown Podcast caps. So if you see somebody on the street wearing a Beantown Podcast cap, you don't have to say, wow, that looks cool, wish I could have one. You can have one today. Just shoot me an email, beantownpodcast@yahoo.com. That's Beantown, BEANTOWN podcast @yahoo.com. And I'll design a hat for you, work with you to get you something you really like. Baseball caps, trucker hats, if you're into T-shirts, custom shoes. These are all things we can do for you. Those baseball caps went for about $18, but we were actually having a Revolutionary War special. So they sold for $17.76 actually. If you're interested, let me know. You can also tweet at me. I'm at BeantownCast. Message us on Facebook. All that sort of stuff. You know how to reach us. This is not a joke. We do have hats that we sent out. And thank you to those who purchased them. It's really exciting for us. But let's get to these first date stories. Tinder. This is all anonymous. Let's just run down the line. We got some stuff on Facebook. We got some emails. Let's check it out here. We have one. The guy said he would knit when he was angry, and I never talked to him again. Definitely a serial killer. Now, I don't want to shed a bad light on the knitting community or the quilting community or the cross stitchers or even the cross dressers. But if you're leading with knitting when you're angry, and granted, let's be real here, a lot of these things are presumably things that are being shared on a first date and potentially a second date. But right in that introductory realm, there are certain things that are definitely fun to share on a first date, and there are certain things about your like deep emotional, I won't say problems, but just complexities that you don't have to get into on a first date, and you probably shouldn't, and that's one of them. So if you knit when you're angry, I don't think that in itself is like the weirdest part of that, but it's definitely weird to lead with that, to share that off the bat. Another says, I've had at least 6 crazies living in Baltimore. Well, that city, let me tell you. Not all via Tinder. Those were actually pretty mild compared to spontaneous dates. Or I was better at filtering then, and then a fun emoji with the tongue sticking out. Baltimore's got some crazies, let me tell you. What a city, riddled with crime and other things. And they got about an 85% mortality rate in Baltimore, almost as bad as Chicago, which Trump said he was going to fix in 3 days. And what are we at now? Trump's been in office for something like, I don't know, it's around like 465 days, and more than that, 500 days. And Chicago's not fixed yet. Half of everybody who visits Chicago gets murdered. The crime there, it's so bad, it's just unbelievable. And I tell you, and people have said this, and people will say this about me. I'm a tough guy. I'm nice, but I'm tough. And I would get in there, and I'd fix that city in 3 days. My Trump, here's the thing. When Trump was like in the early stages of his campaign, this is probably mid 2015, late 2015. So I was like a sophomore in college, and when it was like really still like totally seemed like a joke, and it was really fun to make fun of Donald Trump. I actually worked really hard on my Trump impression, and it got to be really good, pretty good at one point. And then once he got elected, it just kind of got depressing to do it. I should pick it up again. I mean, I know there's a billion people doing it, but you could even hear today, and for those of you who heard me done in the past, that it was a lot better than it is now. I just don't do it often, so it didn't sound very good today. But Baltimore is crazy. Thank you for sharing that story. Here's an email we got. Was listening to your latest episode, thought I'd share my weird date story. Well, thank you. I met up with someone for drinks, and when I first saw him, he seemed nice enough. Well, that's how every date with me starts. I don't like where this is going. However, once he got toasty off one old-fashioned, I don't normally read these emails until I started the podcast. I did read this one before because these were stories that I was going to tell. He got toasty off one old-fashioned. I love that phrase. Thank you. He started asking me about what was the one thing I don't like about myself. That right there, this is actually an interesting point. That's an intriguing question, and that's definitely something I've asked people in a relationship before, and I think that it's a good question to ask. I don't know if it's your strongest play on the first date, just because, here's the thing, I don't think that question in itself is terrible, but I think that there are a billion other questions out there that you should be asking on a first date before you ask that. So unless your first date is lasting like 10 hours, which is too long, you don't need to ask that question. The email continues. From there, he ranted, this sounds like my podcast, about his issues with his dad. That's what I spent the first 5 minutes of my podcast talking about, how he used to get into a lot of fights, not me per se, but emotional fights with myself. This is describing me quite a bit here, and was talking about how he refused to call trans people by their pronouns because it went against his right to believe what he wanted to believe. That was in quotation marks. Well, we did mention cross-dressers already on the podcast, so feeling a little attacked right now. I ended up ghosting him because I was low-key afraid of him, to which he kept crazily texting and calling me. I have other crazy stories, but this was my most recent one. Well, thank you for sharing. It's sent from my iPhone too. That's an extensive message to send from your iPhone. I have had an iPhone now for 4+ years. Around there, 3 years. 3 years I've had an iPhone. And I still, man, the typing is just not great. I mean, it's way better than it was when I first got my phone, but I tell you what, on my old like LG with the manual keyboard, it slid out on the side and you flipped it, 90 degrees and you started typing. I soared in that environment. I was king of texting with that thing. You could not slow me down when I was working it with that baby. And the iPhone, I can still go fast, and autocorrect is good enough that it works most of the time. But there will still be days, oftentimes, it's late at night when I'm tired and I'm at like a weird angle in bed and I'm sending a message or something, or I've had a beer or two. But there will be days when it is just not happening. And then the other thing, this is so weird. I'm sure other people have had these experiences. I don't know why this is. My autocorrect on my iPhone works differently depending on the app I'm using. So if I'm using Messages or sending a text message, works, that's like full capacity. It's working great. If I use it on like Safari, and I use Safari for almost everything on my iPhone because I don't use social media apps like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. I just bookmark their pages. It's so bad. It's like it lags behind. It doesn't catch things the same way it does when I'm sending a text message. I don't know why that is. Maybe some of my software engineer listeners can help me out with that. So there's a difference, and I don't know why that is, but. Back to the email. Thank you for sending that. Yeah, there's been, or I'm sure pretty much everybody who's ever been on a Tinder or Tinder-like app date before has had some sort of crazy story. I'll share one that I haven't told many people. I told some of my close friends about this. It's not like a bad thing that happened to me. It's not going to be weird, but it's just a bad situation. So I go out on a date with this girl. This is probably, I don't know, middle of winter, I'm thinking. Yeah, because I remember how hot it was in her apartment because the heat was on. So this is probably like January or something. And I take the bus out there. She lives like 3 miles south and east of where I live, still in the city. And we go out, we have a drink. It's a little slow going, the conversation at first. She's kind of closed off and, seems nice enough, but just like not great at making eye contact and not great at just like asking me anything about myself. So I'm thinking like, I don't know how this is going. Now we get, a couple beers in and she loosens up a little bit and the conversation's going a lot better. I'm just feeling a lot better about how the date's going. Whole thing lasts like 2 hours. And we had intentionally picked that place because it was close to her apartment. I like to do that on a Tinder date. Pick something that's close to one of yours apartments so you have that option afterwards. I know people who are always like, you should meet exactly halfway. And I'm okay with that if it's like a daytime thing, like a lunch or like a coffee thing. Like I'm chill with that. But when you're having like drinks at night, it's just nice. Whether you're doing something physically after or whether just, you want to be close to someone can get to bed quicker. I appreciate that more than if you both have to do travel just to get back home. So we're close to her apartment. So we go back there and she said, "Do you want to meet my dogs?" And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I love dogs. So we get into her apartment and first thing I notice, I walk in. It's January in Baltimore. It's probably like 20 degrees outside. You walk in, this place is like fourth level Dante. It is just hot as balls, which I'm not used to because, I do for, about a month or so in the winter, turn my heat on. It's always as low as it goes, which is like 61 degrees. This place probably like 85, 86, just way beyond the point of comfort. it'd be like you have to be in that apartment naked or else you're going to be sweating, which is the way I feel right now because it's 90 degrees outside and 80% humidity. But I don't mind like t-shirt and shorts inside in the winter. I had an apartment sophomore year in Chicago where we did not control our heat and it was so hot and I had to do that, but this was like next level. Anyways, so first thing I noticed how hot it is. Next thing, she's got these 2 dogs and they're each in a separate crate right next to each other, right in the living room when you walk in, which I think is like, okay, that's like, I don't know if that's weird. I guess I'm not a dog owner, but like, why do you have them in crates? Why are they in separate crates? She says, oh, they don't like each other. Like, whoa, why do you have 2 dogs that don't like each other? That just seems bad for them. It seems like a terrible headache for you. So we take them each out for a walk, one at a time individually, and we get back, and I noticed something very peculiar, and that is that there are no water dishes in these dogs' crates. And these are big dogs. They're panting. It's hot in that apartment. I'm like, okay, this is strange. So I asked her, do the dogs need water? We should get them some water, right? Because we put them back in the crates when we get back to our apartment. And she says, no, they're fine. They had some water earlier today. And I'm just thinking, a little uncomfortable. These dogs have been in these crates for the last at least 2 hours while we were on our date. I don't know if you were at home before. I don't know if they are out. It doesn't seem like you keep them out when you're at home because they're in crates now and we're at home. There's no water, so what's the deal? And she's like, oh, I mean, I think they're fine. Like, meanwhile, they're panting. It's 85 degrees. So she makes her move. She says, you want to go upstairs? And I'm just like, the dogs, though, they kind of ruined it for me. And so I said, the classic, I'm tired. I got a bar mitzvah tomorrow. I'm planning for a wedding, the classic excuses. So I Uber, I nope the fuck out of there, as they say, nope TF. And I get home and I wake up the next morning and I send one simple message. I say, please, to the Tinder girl, I say, please give your dogs some water or they are going to die. And I send it and I blocked her number and that was the end. So maybe I'm the villain in that story. I don't know. That's obviously not the perfect way to handle the situation, but I am, of course, a 21st century person who is just terrible at confrontation and avoids it. So I guess I ghosted her in a sense, but in a way I felt a little justified in how I did it. So that was my that's probably, if I reached back into the depths of the 7 years that I've been dating, 10 years I've been dating, that's probably not the worst story, but it is one that sticks in my mind. It's the dog girl. It's a bad story. I hope those dogs are alive somehow. I hope they have water. So I guess I'm just ultra sensitive to this sort of thing because I have a dog that died from like heat exhaustion related stuff. So yeah, give your dogs water. It's just a nice thing to do. But thank you to everybody who reached out with your stories. Yeah, those were fun, and I had a fun time reading them. One other thing I want to get to here, I had mentioned about a month ago on the podcast that I had been contacted by a West African prince who had told me of a large fortune that I had rights to all of a sudden. And, I've gotten plenty of these emails before, and oftentimes I will simply mark them as spam and go along, do my business, meaning I'm on the toilet because that's when I catch up on my emails like anybody else. And this time I decided to take the approach a little bit differently. So I play along, email them back. I say, yes, I'm interested, but how did you find me? How did you figure out this was my money? And he emails back a couple days later and says that he found me through Facebook, and I that's a little strange, but I say okay. So how do I get my hands on the money? And he says, well, first thing we have to do is verify your bank account info. And I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. So I have to send him, $100. And if it clears, it's just a testing, right? Amazon actually does this all the time. I'm being real here. They will charge $1 to your account, make sure it clears, and then they refund it back. You might see that on your bank statement occasionally. That's Amazon. They do that. So this guy's just looking for the same thing. Only it's $100. So I say, okay, I send you the $100, but first I need you to send me $50 to verify that this account that I'm sending it to will be received. And he says, no, that's silly. If you just send me the $100, then we can get you the sum of money that you inherited. And so I say, okay, what about $55? So we're bargaining now, and this goes back and forth a little bit. You can tell he's getting a little irritated. I raise my offer, I lower my offer. I'm trying to see what's going to work on this guy, but he refuses to send me any money. So eventually, I'm like, okay, this is fine. I'll do it. So what's your Venmo? Usually these guys, they're looking for PayPal or some sort of wire. Venmo is not usually what they're looking for. But he gives me a name, which was surprising to me. It was just this huge random string of letters. I'm sure he had just created something. Maybe he'd never even heard of Venmo before I asked him, but he created something. So, I said, okay, I'll do it, $100. So I go on to Venmo, and this is a classic move. And I've used this move before. It's the old the didgeridoo switcheroo. Instead of paying him on Venmo, I request on Venmo. Boom. Pull the rug right out from under him. I go hardball on my original offer of $50. I request $65. And a couple of days pass. I've seen nothing. My request is not getting fulfilled. So I email him back and say, hey, what's going on? I thought we agreed to $65 Venmo request. And he emails me back and says, no, that's not what we're agreeing upon. Please stop emailing me. And at this point, I'm just getting frustrated. I'm not getting the money that I thought I was promised. Now I'm not going to be able to get my lump sum from West Africa, Blood Diamonds, wherever it's from. And that's how it ended. I wish there was a better Big Bang ending. I emailed him a couple other times. He didn't reach out. I think he marked me as spam, unfortunately. So to all you West African princes out there, I know what you're going through. I understand the struggle. I too have been blocked by lovers and by former friends and by other West African princes. So I know the struggle. I know how that rejection feels. So for any of you West African princes out there who are listening to the podcast, you want to share your story of being marked as spam or being rejected, you can email us, beantownpodcast@yahoo.com. That's Beantown, BEANTOWN, podcast@yahoo.com. We'd love to hear what's going on, what's troubling you, the issues you've had, trying to con people out of money, because I've been there. I understand both sides of it now. It's a hard knock life. And I don't envy you guys going through it. So that was my my email story. Thank you to Matthew for bringing that up and remembering to bring that back to the attention of the podcast and to all the listeners. How are we doing here on time? 34 minutes in. We're right in the sweet spot, the highway to the danger zone. Been watching a lot of Kenny Loggins clips on YouTube these days, as you often will do. There's a great version of Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald singing "What a Fool Believes" on YouTube. It's slowed down, it's soulful, it's got it's a lot of class. Check that out. So those two guys are great, and even better when Kenny Loggins isn't on coke. This has been Quinn David Furness, the Beantown Podcast. This was my Father's Day special. We are looking to have a guest next week. I think that's going to happen. We just got to firm up and confirm up some details, and we will announce that as the date gets closer. Thank you all for your support and for reaching out. I hope everyone is enjoying their June, and I know I am. I have made a personal promise to myself to not turn on the AC until it hits July, because I know once I turn on the AC, I'll get used to it, and also it's just going to skyrocket my my utilities bill. So I've been doing well so far. I've just been basically anywhere I go in my apartment, I bring my fan with me, plug it in, and put it right on me. It's Spotlight style, and not the sexually abusing young boys. I'm talking about like an actual physical Spotlight style. It's right on me. It's on me now. It's cool. It's refreshing. I keep my cool, when I got the Spotlight on me. That's just how I do, and I do things how I do things. So this podcast ended up going okay for having almost zero preparation. Thank you for listening to my song. I prepared that for about 2 minutes before I actually hit record, and I think it worked out just okay. And everything that I detailed in that song was true. We did go to Orlando. Dad got food poisoning, and I still had a lot of fun, even though I'm sure he was absolutely miserable, because I have had food poisoning 3 times in my life, and yeah, it sucks. So yeah, thank you for listening to my song. Maybe it will go platinum. I don't know. We should have a Beantown album. I think that would be fun. Maybe a Christmas album. We'll have to start thinking about that as the holidays get closer. But yeah, thank you for listening to that. Thank you for sending your horror first date stories. Those were fun to read out. And yeah, that's what I got for this podcast. So as we move into the 37th minute, that's going to wrap it up for the Beantown podcast. Like us, subscribe, YouTube, SoundCloud, Player FM, iTunes, wherever you're listening to your podcast. And if you like what you hear, tell one friend about this, right? We used to go to church as kids, and your mission statement, it's like Mission Impossible. You used to, next week or this next week, tell one person about Jesus. Bring one friend to church. The more, and this is the only comment I'll make, and I don't feel this way, but the more you look at the church structure, doesn't it just feel like or evangelical structure, I'll say, looks more and more like a pyramid scheme every day, doesn't it? Bring one of your friends, they bring one of their friends, yada, yada, yada. You think they could have tried a little bit harder to differentiate themselves from the whole pyramid scheme thing. Anyways, that's where we're going to end with today. I'm going to go see a movie. Normally I would just go check out an indie movie at my nearest theater, but I've actually seen everything that they're playing right now, so I'm going to go down to the main one, and it was between Ocean's 8 and Tag, and neither one of those movies I was actually like that psyched about, but I'm actually going to go see Tag, which is not a common thing for me to do. I don't usually go see the mainstream comedy movies, but yeah, it's free for me because my movie pass, all you got to do is walk down there. So we're going to go check it out, and I will report back to you next week on how that movie is. Go see Incredibles 2 if you get the chance, if you like Pixar. Very solid film. Not quite as great as the original, but it's rare to have a sequel of any kind live up to that. It's still fun. I had a good time watching it. So that's what Pixar did this year. This has been Quinn David Furness. This is my podcast. It's the Beantown Podcast, and it is the People's Podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing, and I will check in on you next week.